Michael Patrick Shields is on the air.
Good morning, world.
Good morning, Michigan. A Friday morning to you. A massive 8.9 earthquake in Japan has triggered a tsunami making its way across the Pacific. We'll get you the details in just a minute, but first, a rare minute with John McMurray, the world-famous meteorologist from here in Michigan. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Michael.
What is happening in Japan now? They're telling people to evacuate parts of Honolulu, and the entire west coast of the United States has a tsunami warning?
That is correct. In fact, they've already had an earthquake of about 4 on the scale in around the Hawaiian Islands, and they've already seen some of the tsunami across parts of northern Japan.
8.9 was the initial quake, and the aftershocks were more than 6.0, which is the fifth biggest earthquake in human history, as I understand it, of course, recorded history. Do you think that the effects will be felt as far away as, let's say, San Diego and San Francisco?
It is very possible, but probably not to the same degree as have already been noted in around the northern parts of Japan. That tsunami has really been extreme, not quite as high, at least so far, as the Indonesian tsunami a couple of years ago, but it is definitely something that bears monitoring all along the Pacific coast to the east of Japan, anywhere from the Gulf of Alaska down towards even the northern parts of Mexico.
Wow. Okay, I know you're busy this morning. Thank you for the quick update. We'll keep in touch.
You bet.
John McMurray, 35 to 40 years, predicting the weather here in the state of Michigan. Spent a lot of time at sea, too, in the Merchant Marine. And Gary Austin, let's just go through the nuts and bolts of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
While you slept, a powerful tsunami has spawned the largest earthquake, spawned by the largest earthquake in Japan's history, has slammed the eastern coast. Now, here's the scene. You have an 8.9 earthquake in Japan, and the resulting tsunami swept away boats, cars, and homes, fires burning out of control, and 19 aftershocks or more. As I said, most of them over magnitude 6.0. There's a 1,300-mile stretch of Japan that had violent tremors as far away as Tokyo, hundreds of miles from the epicenter. The earthquake was actually in the sea. And so when that happened, the tsunami rolled into Japan. Now there's a tsunami warning for dozens of Pacific countries, Hawaii, Chile, if you can believe that, and, of course, all of California, Oregon, Washington, all the way up to Alaska later this morning at some stage, somewhere around 8 o'clock Eastern time, as I understand it, is when Hawaii could begin to feel the effects of this. Now, if you can imagine waves of muddy water sweeping over farmland and carrying buildings that were actually on fire inland in Japan, as people tried to drive away. It's the stuff you would imagine as if it were the end of the world. This is what is happening in Japan right now. A massive 8.9 earthquake triggered a tsunami. Matt Alt was in Tokyo when the disaster occurred. Here's what he said.
The waters look to be overwhelming a lot of these measures that have been put in place. And I don't think this is any kind of statement about ill-preparedness. I think it's just a testament to how powerful this earthquake was and how powerful the tsunami is.
Now, if you listen in this next piece of audio, you'll hear the haunting warning signs blasting in Hawaii. Residents in low-lying coastal zones are being urged to evacuate in advance of a possible tsunami. Here's Malin Moore in Honolulu.
Hawaii residents in coastal inundation zones have been warned to evacuate immediately. And that's what's happening at this hour. In Honolulu, major roads leading out of low-lying areas, including the heavily populated area of Waikiki, are jammed with motorists heading out toward higher ground. The warning sirens in Hawaii went off at about 10 o'clock p.m., indicating that a tsunami warning was in effect. Pacific Tsunami Warning Center Director Chip McCreary said computer models indicate the waves reaching Hawaii would be approximately 6 feet high, but warned that computer models can be in error and residents should heed evacuation warnings. In Hawaii, the earliest waves from the Japan earthquake are not expected to arrive until approximately 3 a.m. Hawaii time or 5 o'clock Pacific time.
And, of course, that's 8 o'clock this morning here in Michigan. They are preparing for the worst and praying for the best, according to the Honolulu Department of Emergency Management. Tourists, if you've ever been to Waikiki Beach, they're being moved out of there. other to higher floors of the hotels or to higher water. There are people stocking up on gas, bottled water, canned food, and generators. And the waves are going to look like an elevation of the sea level. The sea is going to rise above its normal level and stay high for 10 or 15 minutes before that water starts to recede, as we understand it. So recapping, devastation in Japan this morning. Magnitude 8.9 earthquake hit overnight, triggering a tsunami that rolled in off the Pacific, inundating part of the northeast coast of Japan, the entire state of Hawaii under a tsunami warning at this hour, and the residents are being asked to take urgent action to protect lives and property, and there is a tsunami warning for the entire west coast of the United States, from San Diego all the way up to Hawaii. That's what we know at this hour, although we're monitoring and watching and reaching out to our contacts in Hawaii and in California this morning. Gary.
Yeah, I tell you what, I think in Japan, Matt Alt said it best. It's not about not being prepared, not being ready, but when something like this hits, there's absolutely, positively nothing you can do. And I tell you, I just can't imagine. I mean, the devastation, first of all, and then for those, let's say, flying into and out of these areas, the potential for a backup of air travel. I mean, it's one of the ancillary effects, of course. Insignificant in the big picture, but something we have to take into account, of course, the economic impact of all of that. Not to mention, of course, most importantly, the lives lost. And we have no idea. We know there's been severe damage. We know quite a few are missing. How many? We'll find out later. 23-foot
tsunami, and because of technology, if you are watching on Fox 47 right now or any of the other television networks, you're seeing pictures that you can't even imagine. You are actually seeing, video of the tsunami wiping away homes, crossing over farmland. You're seeing boats and buildings being carried by water. It is a scene of Armageddon in Japan. And like I said, we will be in touch with our contacts in Hawaii shortly, and also on the west coast of California, where it's very, very early this morning. But if you can imagine being awakened by that siren you heard in that audio from Hawaii, it would be a very, very haunting situation and very scary. So we'll keep monitoring that. In the meantime, Gary, you want to bring us up to on the rest of the news on this Firekeepers Casino Friday, brought to you by
our friends at AmericanMetalRoofs.com. You'll never, ever have to worry about the weather with a beautiful, guaranteed American Metal roof. AmericanMetalRoofs.com, AmericanMetalRoofs.com.
All right, thank you very much, sir.
Governor Snyder says the state has gone overboard with these tax credits. Saying it again, he says very few probably realize we'll spend $2 billion on them over the next 4 years. He says some of these will still be in place 20 years down the road. The governor says the ones already agreed to, of course, will be honored, but he says it's time to start slowing things down. And he's proposing to do this in his new budget. However, some local developers are now concerned about this, weighing in. If this happens, companies, they say, and in turn the jobs they would bring, will end up going someplace else. And some also say, with this issue still up in the air right now, that's getting in the way of wrapping up some potential deals right now, saying those who have money to loan are less apt to do that if they feel there could be concern they will not be paid back. Details on this story in the Jackson Citizen Patriot. Serious concerns there. How about those MSU Spartans? They did it, Michael Patrick, knocking off Iowa. This is the first game, Big Ten tournament action, yesterday by 5 points, 66-61. We'll see if our Wolverines can continue the trend, and they will play later on today, tipping off 2:30 against Illinois. Both of these teams have 19-12 records, so we'll see. And the story,
I'm getting an update from Rick Gray in Hawaii, who says his cell phone has no signal now. He sent me an email because they must be jammed, the cell phone towers. The sirens are starting, he says. And he says he's safe because he lives outside the tsunami zone. But the cell phones are not working in Hawaii, as we understand at the moment, from Rick Gray.
All right. That's a story we'll track all morning here. And a follow-up on this story we told you about over the past couple of days, and I guess the long and short of this, be careful what you tweet. Think twice, for heaven's sakes. We have this update here. New Media Strategies has lost its contract with Chrysler because of this. All the flaps stirred up after that employee said something he shouldn't have. The word that starts with an F on Chrysler's official Twitter account this week. Something like that. The company had been in charge of the automaker's tweets So this employee who wrote on the Post, he was fired by the agency this week. And boy, I'll tell you, the overlapping effect of this is really extraordinary. We have Chrysler now saying the quick and harsh response was needed because the automaker does not want to backslide now on the goodwill built up by promoting Detroit. And again, this was something derogatory, referencing, I guess, something involving the way people drive in Detroit. And just one of those things, the tweet went out, but once it's gone, it's gone. So, case in point, think twice before you tweet. Oh, important note here. This is something we often forget about, including yours truly until the last minute. Daylight savings time. It starts this weekend. It does. Boy,
Spring forward.
Like, where did that come from? Boy, time just scoots along, doesn't it? Yep, the extra hour of sunlight will take effect Sunday, and we do it at 2 a.m. Most of us do it before then, if we remember to. So don't forget, this year, daylight savings time will end on November 6th. It's observed by 48 of the 50 states, and there are only 2 states that don't do this, Arizona and Hawaii.
Okay, thanks to Gary Austin. We're live here in American Metal Roost studio on a Firekeepers Friday. It's 18 after the hour. More details when we get back. It's Michael Patrick Shields. While you slept, the most powerful earthquake to hit Japan in at least 100 years has unleashed walls of water by the way of a tsunami that swept across rice fields, engulfed towns, dragged houses onto highways, tossed cars and boats like toys. Local media in Japan reporting at least 32 deaths with more casualties feared. The 8.9 magnitude quake that struck at 2:46 p.m. prompted the National Weather Service to issue a tsunami warning for at least 20 countries. The United States is one of those. Hawaii, obviously, right in the path of this tsunami. We talked this morning with Rick Gray, who is in Hawaii. He says that that they should know by 3 a.m., maybe hit by 6 a.m., and that it might be 4 feet is what he is hearing in Hawaii. So 6 a.m. Hawaii time is around 11 here. I think we should check the times on that since he may be adjusting for the East Coast. As I understood it, it would be 8 a.m. Eastern time that we would know the effects as they reached the Hawaiian Islands, not just Honolulu, where they're asking people to go to higher floors in those high-rises on Waikiki Beach, and also to higher ground, too. So we'll keep you up to date as details become available this morning. You can hear in this audio the eerie sound of the tsunami warning in the background. We have a report this morning from Malin Moore, who talks about what's going on in Honolulu at the moment.
Hawaii residents in coastal inundation zones have been warned to evacuate immediately, and that's what's happening at this hour. In Honolulu, major roads leading out of low-lying areas, including the heavily populated area of Waikiki, are jammed with motorists heading out toward higher ground. The warning sirens in Hawaii went off at about 10 o'clock p.m., indicating that a tsunami warning was in effect. Pacific Tsunami Warning Center Director Chip McCreary said computer models indicate the waves reaching Hawaii would be approximately 6 feet high, but warned that computer models can be in error and residents should heed evacuation warnings. In Hawaii, the earliest waves from the Japan earthquake are not expected to arrive until approximately 3 a.m. Hawaii time or 5 o'clock Pacific time.
Yeah, that would be 8 a.m. here in Michigan. We're going to call Scott Head, who is at the Waikoloa Village Resort on the Big Island. He used to live here in Michigan and ran the Treetops Resort in Gaylord, and obviously right now he is probably making precautions for guests at his hotel and locals who live along that shore right there. We'll talk with him shortly. It's 25 minutes after the hour on Friday. Yesterday, a controversial hearing took place, and it involved some very, serious Michigan connections. Representative Keith Ellison, the U.S. Congressman from Minnesota, the Democrat who grew up in Detroit, gave emotional testimony, and Congressman John Dingell submitted not only written testimony but spoke as well. This was a hearing called by Committee Chair Peter King, the Republican of New York. He wanted to talk about the possibility of radicalization of America's Muslim community. And Salah Hassan is the director of Michigan State University's Islam, Muslim, and Journalism Education, a core faculty member of Muslim Studies here in East Lansing. Good morning to you, sir.
Hello, thanks.
I don't know if if I got your title right there. It seems complicated.
Yeah.
What did you get a chance to monitor these hearings at all yesterday?
Well, I've been reading about it, and I didn't actually watch them, but I have been reading about it and reading the reports coming out, and I think that everything indicates that it's a fairly partisan event involving Democrats on one side and Republicans on the other.
How does that become a partisan matter? Islamic radicalization in America? I don't get it. Shouldn't we all be concerned, or at least pay attention to the possibility?
Well, it seems like it's developing as a wedge issue in the forthcoming elections. And so one of these things that could be then used, like abortion or gun control, or one of those types of issues where clearly Republicans feel one way, older, more religious, conservative people in the U.S. feel one way, and they tend to vote Republican, and younger, more liberally minded people feel another way.
But the build-up to these hearings, unlike any I've seen in a long time, people were talking all week, and in fact for a couple of weeks, about how controversial the concept of having a hearing like this was. Why was it so controversial?
Well, I think whenever you have a hearing, a congressional hearing, what it suggests is that there's some kind of a problem that needs to be addressed in advance. It's not as though the hearing is a discovery hearing. It's not as though the hearing is about, like, let's see, is there something here? It's like when you begin and you say, Muslim radicalism, we're having a congressional hearing, the assumption is that Muslims are already radical, that there's already a problem in the Muslim community that needs to be addressed. And so it's almost in advance a condemnation of that community. It's almost like saying, we've got to seek this thing out. We've got to get, we got to track it down. And so for Muslims,
we're not used to Congress being proactive.
Well, it's not so much a question of being proactive. It's a question of whether or not it's proactive in the right way. And so, if you're concerned with if Homeland Security means something more than Muslim radicalism, then it has to include, the committee's mandate has to include more than just Muslims as its target of investigation, and testimony needs to come out around other issues. So, for example, there's lots of controversy at a certain point around, polygamists in certain Christian churches, and pedophilia,
militias,
and whether or not something needs to be. Does there need to be a congressional hearing on those issues? And so the question is also whether or not Muslims really represent, as a group, a terrorist threat, or whether we're just talking about particular individuals. And so to undertake a hearing in this manner suggests in advance that the community is to blame for the actions of particular individuals.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think that it's bound to produce fear among Muslims, and that's a negative effect, of course, because if the goal is to get Muslim communities to police themselves and to have them work more cooperatively with law enforcement and that kind of thing, you're not going to get that kind of cooperation. This kind of hearing is going to put shields up. Sorry about that.
Get defensive.
And yeah. And so I think that the effect that you want is what you see is that Muslims generally in the U.S. are fairly well integrated. A lot of them actually vote Republican. They vote Republican, they vote Democrat. They're high-income earners or middle-income earners. They're employed. They're small businesses. So to create this sort of feeling of fear about and the threat of Muslims actually works very negatively. And so there's got to be another way to address the problem. And I think that probably one of the things that could have been done a little bit differently is if this came from a clearly bipartisan position, if it was clearly organized around questions of broader security threats that would not just target one community.
There will be people listening saying, I don't care about the political correctness of it. I just want to nip this in the bud if it's something that's going to come back and bite us down the road. In other words, they're scared of the radicals.
Yeah.
They do exist, right? There are Islamic radicals in the United States?
Yeah, it's a complicated issue because, on one hand, what you have is the FBI and Homeland Security in some ways infiltrating mosque communities, and they have informants and they have people in there who are gathering information, but they're also provoking people to do particular things by providing them with resources and ideas and motivation and kind of thing. So you do have problems along the lines where, like, is law enforcement itself acting in a way that's ethical, and perhaps one needs to look a little bit at the way that law enforcement has been infiltrating mosque communities and producing a certain kind of a set of actions that we've seen in the case of Mahmouda in Portland, or this case of in Detroit, Luqman Amin Abdullah, who was this Detroit area imam who was shot in October 2009 by the FBI. The FBI actually provided the warehouse in Dearborn and set him up, and he went there.
Is that right?
There was a
little bit of
raid.
entrapment.
So, I mean, there's been several cases like this. So I'm not saying there's not radicalism. I'm just saying we need to look at the way that the U.S. government has been responding to these kinds of concerns, and whether or not it's actually been productive or actually counterproductive.
Can Congressman Dingell, Democrat, longest-serving member in the House of Representatives, who his district is Dearborn, can he split the difference like this? He gave verbal testimony that talked about, he warned against his written testimony warned against McCarthyism, and he was concerned that there's demagoguery and mischaracterization, misrepresentation. And then in his written testimony, he said he thinks the House Homeland Security Committee could achieve a fine result in alerting the nation to a real concern. Can you say both of those things?
Well, yeah, I think that the fact is that these hearings are going to take place. And they did. There was one yesterday, and there will be more. King has said that there will be more, and that to back down would be cowardice and, craven to political pressure and that kind of thing. So there's going to be more of those things. So the question is, I think, at this point is like what kind of testimony there will be, what kind of things will be said, how the media is going to report it, and whether or not this can become a civics lesson for U.S. citizens. Is this an opportunity to actually re-examine the Constitution in the way that, Congress is upholding the Constitution? And is this an infringement on religious freedom, or is this actually part of the mandate of Homeland Security to go out and, the Committee on Homeland Security to go out and hold
Do you
these
know the
hearings?
answer to that question yet, in your mind?
Well, I think, in my view, this is an infringement of religious freedom. And I say that more from the perspective of, is it really these individuals or this group, this broader group? And so to talk about Muslim Americans really means a group. So if you're talking about particular individuals, if you're talking about
The radicals.
yeah, if you're talking about a particular organization, then that's another thing. But right now, what we're talking about is really American Muslim radicalization. And that itself is much too broad of a blanket, and it does come very close to being an infringement on issues of religious freedom, and becomes a form of potentially religious persecution. And the U.S. has gone to war, or at least supported people who have been at war in defense of their religious freedoms. In fact, the U.S. in some ways might be considered to be a country founded on the principle of religious freedom. People fled religious persecution in Europe and came to North America. When Jews fled Nazi Germany, it was for religious persecution, or the Inquisition. So I think to create a community sort of sense of responsibility here is a little bit too much. I mean, it needs to be much more narrow in its focus, or much broader in its scope to include other types of security threats, not just Muslims, in order to
Like the radical Hindus?
Well,
I'm
said,
being,
yeah. I mean, I think that
Is Islam a religion of peace, like some people say?
Sure. Yeah, of course it is. Yeah.
And is there language in there that could inspire radicals in the Quran?
Of course there is. Yeah, and as there is with any religion,
Okay.
I think you'll find that an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, or turn the other cheek. I mean, you see that in any monotheistic tradition, I think, and Islam is part of the monotheistic tradition.
Can I ask which religion you subscribe to?
I was raised as a Muslim,
You were?
and I'm secular. Yeah.
Can we keep in touch? This was fascinating.
Yeah.
The more we talk, the more we learn, and I'm really fascinated by the
Okay.
topic, and it's great to
Yeah.
have you right here in Michigan.
Okay.
So, and we appreciate you being up so
No
early
problem.
this morning too.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it.
Fantastic. In fact, Representative Ellison got very emotional. We'll hear that in just a couple of minutes. He grew up in Detroit, and he is one of only 2 members of the United States Congress who are Muslims. So stay tuned for that. And thanks again to Salah Hassan from Michigan State University. It's 35 after the hour. 20 minutes before the hour, Michael Patrick Shields heard all across the state of Michigan, updating you now. A powerful tsunami was the result of the largest earthquake in Japan's history while you slept, slammed the eastern coast of Japan, sweeping away boats, cars, homes, and people, too. Widespread fires burning out of control in Japan. It was magnitude 8.9, followed by at least 19 aftershocks. Most of them magnitude 6.0, which would be a big earthquake on its own. And now the tsunami warning issued for dozens of Pacific countries extended to Hawaii and as far away as Chile and the west coast of the United States, all the way from San Diego up through Washington State, Oregon, and into Alaska this morning. Hawaii expected to feel the effects at about 8 o'clock a.m. Eastern time this morning. The warning sirens have been going off in Hawaii. And we have been speaking with people we know who are in the islands there this morning about what they're doing. They're moving tourists, let's say Waikiki, from low floors of hotels up to high levels and those high rises all along that beach there next to Diamond Head, and moving other people to high land. It's now 20 minutes before the hour. And live from our American Metal Roofs studio here in Lansing, we're joined by Jamie Westenbarger, who's in Grand Rapids from Forest Hills Financial, a registered principal of Invest Financial and president of Forest Hills Financial Incorporated. Invest not affiliated with Forest Hills Financial, and opinions expressed are those of Jamie and not necessarily those of Invest. Good morning to you, sir.
Morning, Mike Patrick.
We can presume, can we not, that an event like this will affect the market today?
Yeah, I mean, usually when you see something of this magnitude, obviously that's going to have some effect on kind of the jitteriness of overall investors, and especially after what we saw with the market yesterday and some pretty significant downturns and I guess you would say some nervousness overall with what's going on. This doesn't necessarily help people feel great about the world economy just from an uncertainty standpoint as we trying to ascertain kind of what's happening and how bad really things are.
The Dow was down 228 yesterday. The NASDAQ lost 51, and the S&P dropped 25. From what I read, most of that was due to world uncertainty.
Yeah, it really was. There's so many different things going on, and some numbers started to come out that weren't exactly what we had thought. We saw actually an uptick in unemployment filings, which kind of surprised everyone as we were starting to think last week unemployment was definitely headed in the downward direction. And sometimes 1 week's adjustment really doesn't mean anything in the overall number, but it can give everyone kind of the jitters about where things are going. And that can combine with some inflation concerns and, of course, the overall oil situation just kind of combined for a day where everyone seemed to be a little bit nervous about what was going on overall. And the tsunami situation probably will continue that a little bit today.
Okay, we appreciate that very much, Jamie. Thank you from Grand Rapids. That's Jamie Westenbarger, Forest Hills Financial. They were cheering yesterday in Indianapolis at the Big Ten tournament because the Michigan State Spartans went ahead and beat Iowa 66-61. Draymond Green had 21 points, 14 rebounds. Kalen Lucas had 11, and Appling added 10. Now the 7-seed MSU is going to play 2-seed Purdue. That's in a quarterfinal matchup at Conseco Fieldhouse tonight. The Boilermakers have beaten the Spartans twice this season in the regular season. What will happen tonight at Conseco Fieldhouse, we'll see. And the University of Michigan begins its run in the Big Ten tournament against Illinois this afternoon. They ended the regular season, the Wolverines did 19-12, 9-9 in conference play, and met Illinois only once this year, lost 54-52. And the winner of the game will face the winner of the afternoon's Ohio State Northwestern contest. Lots of people you know from Michigan are there in Indianapolis for the Big Ten tournament. Tigers beat the Florida Marlins yesterday in Jupiter, Florida, 6-1. They're going to play in Jupiter again today. This time it's the St. Louis Cardinals. And the Red Wings tonight have the Edmonton Oilers in Detroit at Joe Louis Arena, the end of a 2-game homestand. Doug Janik has been recalled, the defenseman from the Grand Rapids Griffins. He will be in Detroit tonight. Pistons in Oklahoma City tonight. They tip off against Thunder, and then they're going to play Denver tomorrow night before they head back to the Palace. The PGA Tour. Let's start at Doral in Miami, where they had some unbelievable microbursts. Towers were blown over and scoreboards knocked down. It tore through the Doral Resort, very near the airport there. Trees were uprooted. No one's seen it. It's like a hurricane, according to Vijay Singh. So that is disrupted play yesterday. 52-mile-an-hour winds, and Hunter Mahan has finished 11 holes. He technically has the lead at 7 under par, 2 ahead of Charlie Hoffman, Vijay Singh, Nick Watney. Rory McIlroy 7 under par, 3 back. Padraig Harrington is 4 back at 3 under par. Mickelson 5 back, 2 under, and Tiger Woods 1 under par through 15 holes. And down in Puerto Rico, they have a second PGA Tour event this weekend, and that's at the Rio Grande area of Puerto Rico, their Trump International Golf Club. And Justin Hicks is 4 under par. He is the man we spoke to earlier this week from Wyandotte, Michigan, grew up here in the state. He is 5 shots behind James Driscoll, who's 9 under par, and, well, he's 3 clear of Angel Cabrera, too. Interesting fields all split up because there's a World Golf Championship event at Doral this weekend. We're going live, yes, live to India when we get back. Virg Bernero, one-time candidate for governor and mayor of Lansing, is there, and we'll find out what he's up to. Stay tuned for that. It's Michael Patrick Shields, and it's Friday. You know by now, while you slept, Japan has been struck with a massive 8.9 magnitude earthquake. That's on the Richter scale there. That triggered a tsunami, and now Hawaii and other parts of the Pacific bracing for a destructive tsunami after that massive earthquake. Tsunami sirens were sounded in coastal areas, and they were being evacuated in Hawaii, where the first waves were expected to hit about 8 a.m. Eastern Time this morning. The Hawaii-based Pacific Tsunami Warning Center has widened its warning beyond East Asia. That includes Hawaii, Australia, New Zealand, the entire U.S. West Coast, Mexico, Central and South America, and the rest of the Pacific Ocean. The tsunami waves have the potential to swamp coastal areas of all of Hawaii's islands, and we are keeping as much as we can up to date on when that will happen, if it will happen. We're talking about an elevation of sea level for 10 to 15 minutes. And as a result, that water could flood the coastline and be a hazard to people and buildings on the coast of the Hawaiian Islands. It's 9 minutes before the hour. This morning, we're live in our American Metal Roof studio, and we welcome to the program the mayor of the city of Lansing, former candidate for governor, who typically is right down the street from us, but this morning, he's all the way around the world. Where do we find you today, Mr. Mayor?
Pune, India.
Pune, India. We were just sitting here with you the other day, a few seconds ago, and all of a sudden you're all the way around the world. What are you doing in India?
Well, we were called away. It was kind of a last-minute thing. We'd been planning to try to come to India in January or February to take a business trip, a business mission with some business folks, and to stir up some business. As it ends up, there's a CEO of a big multinational company that has operations all over the world who's about to make a strategic decision for his company that could affect Michigan and Lansing. And so he was willing to take time for us. He wanted to sit down with us. We've already met with him and his people and toured 2 of his operations in India, in Mumbai and Pune, and we're going to have dinner. So we're hopeful that, in a few weeks or a month or so, we could have a positive decision. We are in the hunt for, and he doesn't want his company's name out at this point, but we're in the hunt for a major investment. We're competing on a global basis and also with nearby states. In the Midwest. This is for a new expansion of his footprint in North America. So we're very much in the hunt. We're excited about it. It had to be done. It had to be done now. We're going to spend as much time on the plane, just about as we are on the ground here. But hopefully it will be worthwhile. As you know, we hear about this global economy. We are in a global battle for jobs, and this has been fascinating. It's my first trip to India. But sometimes it has to be done one-on-one, CEO to CEO, so to speak. He wanted to see me eyeball to eyeball. I think it's going well, but it's a reminder that we need all those economic tools. Michael Patrick, there's a debate going on with the governor's budget and the legislature about the value of economic incentives. I can tell you we need every one of those tools in the toolbox. The brownfield, to encourage people to come and redevelop brownfield sites, we need to be able to compete. If we disarm unilaterally and say, well, never mind the economic incentives, we could be saying goodbye to a lot of jobs like this.
What is his most important? What's going to be the tipping point, you think? What is he most concerned about? What is he most intrigued by when he thinks about moving parts of his business here to the state capital?
Well, I wish I knew. That's part of the dance. I wish I knew exactly what was going to be the key thing. But, we've talked about a variety of things, and it's very interesting because sometimes some people think, well, it's all about taxes or it's all about unions. We've talked about taxes. We've talked about unions. We've talked about the supply chain. We've talked about the skilled workforce. We've talked about infrastructure because this is a manufacturing outfit. And, you know, all those things matter. It's no one thing. There's no silver bullet. And relationships, you know, relationships matter. We forget sometimes. These are people. We think about, you know, a big faceless corporation. Well, it has a face. I've sat with the face of this multinational corporation. He's a very decent man. And part of it is relationships. They're going to make a decision, and they want to go somewhere where they can trust that they're going to be treated properly. That if there's a problem, that they can call someone. So even in this technologically advanced economy, the fact is relationships matter.
Do you know who our
So
biggest
all those
competition
factors,
is?
All those factors are in play, and we're trying to build a relationship.
Do you know
and that still does matter in the business world, like anywhere else. That your word counts for something. And so we're trying to build that relationship. They are familiar with Michigan. They have operations in Michigan. And they really value the skilled workforce in Michigan. But it's going to be a variety of things that go into play. And I feel that the economics, the numbers are part of it. You know, the fact is we're competing. We're competing with other states who would be delighted to steal this company. You know, I say steal because they've got somewhat operations in Michigan already. We have to be in the game. We cannot afford unilateral disarmament. We have to be in the game. We need all those economic tools. And like I said, I feel it's going well. We're in the hunt. I didn't come here just to whistle Dixie. It had to be done. He wanted to talk to us eyeball to eyeball, and I hope that we're building a constructive relationship. One that even if we don't win this particular battle, which I hope we do win this decision, but you know, we're building a relationship for the long haul as well.
Thanks for the long-distance call. When you get back, I'd love to hear in detail your impressions of India, and we appreciate you going all the way around the world to bring business back to Michigan. That's Lansing Mayor Virg Bernero, the Democrat who ran for governor, and you heard the passion in his voice at whatever hour it is. It's probably getting close to happy hour in India right about now. It's Michael Patrick Shields, back after the news. Good morning, Michigan. A very pleasant Friday to you, and it is seriously less than pleasant this morning in the Pacific Basin, particularly in Japan, where there's a massive 8.9 Richter scale earthquake that really the epicenter, as I understand it, was in the ocean, and it provoked a tsunami that and imagine this. The initial earthquake is 8.9. The 20 or so aftershocks, 6.0. Now, typically a 6.0 earthquake on its own is bad enough. These are aftershocks, and the scene is unbelievable. It's the stuff of Armageddon. The tsunami washed cars, houses, farm equipment, burning homes being carried by the water inland and then washed them all back out. And now there is a tsunami warning for Hawaii and for the west coast of the United States. We have a report from Hawaii right now from Malin Moore, and if you listen in the background, you'll hear the very haunting tsunami warning sirens going off.
Hawaii residents in coastal inundation zones have been warned to evacuate immediately. And that's what's happening at this hour. In Honolulu, major roads leading out of low-lying areas, including the heavily populated area of Waikiki, are jammed with motorists heading out toward higher ground. The warning sirens in Hawaii went off at about 10 o'clock p.m., indicating that a tsunami warning was in effect. Pacific Tsunami Warning Center Director Chip McCreary said computer models indicate the waves reaching Hawaii would be approximately 6 feet high, but warned that computer models can be in error and residents should heed evacuation warnings. In Hawaii, the earliest waves from the Japan earthquake are not expected to arrive until approximately 3 a.m. Hawaii time or 5 o'clock Pacific time.
You can hear them in the background there. Let's listen in to the radio right now. If you were in Hawaii, where they're expecting a 6.5-foot wave in places like Kona and Hilo, you might be listening to KHBH Radio, 8:30 a.m. Here's what you would hear.
19th floor of an office building. When the quake struck, this was mid-afternoon for us, and we first had this up and down movement, you know, as if somebody was poking us with a stick from underneath the ground. And then there was huge swaying side by side for what felt like way over a minute. There was no damage in our office, but now we're seeing live footage of, you know, broken windows, even in Tokyo. We're hundreds of miles away from the epicenter, but even here, the quake was quite strong.
Has the communication been between government officials, local and federal, and the people?
Yeah, well, first of all, for the people, it's very difficult to get a phone line to connect to anybody within Tokyo or within Japan. We're all trying to call our families with mixed luck.
Yeah, and
I've
not
been able
only
to
in
get through-
Japan are the cell phones having a tough time being used. Our contacts in Hawaii, Rick Gray and Danielle Tucker at the NBC affiliate there, they say their cell phones aren't even working. Robert Shields, the meteorologist from WTOL TV 11 in Toledo, educated at the University of Michigan, and my brother is on the other end of our line right now with his assessment of what he's seen and heard this morning. Good morning to you.
Hi there. Pretty amazing. This is the fifth most powerful earthquake since 1900 worldwide, so this is a big deal.
And am I right in saying that it happened in the ocean?
That's correct. And for 2 days prior to this big one, there were significant earthquakes leading up to it. So there were not only aftershocks now, there were foreshocks for about 48 hours before this the big one hit.
So what happened is that out in the ocean, the earthquake strikes, the tsunami goes inland and causes untold damage and death throughout Japan. And now the reverberations through the rest of the Pacific, as we understand, there's a tsunami warning for the entire west coast of the United States, all the way from San Diego up through Washington State, Oregon, all the way up to Alaska, down to Mexico. And Hawaii is next, though. 8:07 a.m. Eastern Time this morning, they could get waves of up to 6.5 feet. That doesn't sound like a lot, but in a tsunami situation, if you're in Waikiki Beach or Kona or any of the islands, all of the islands are expected to be affected, including, the Garden Islands, Maui, the rest. Is 6.5, if that hits Hawaii at 8 o'clock this morning, is that devastating?
Well, I'm thinking of I did get to visit Hawaii once, and I was on Kauai, and the thing is, it's not one wave that comes in. If it's a one wave that's 6 feet high, you say, okay, but it's actually a sustained rising of the water of 6 feet. And then in the Hawaiian Islands, what happens is the water wraps around, and actually on the lee side of the wave, the rise in the water can be even higher. So it's really a significant event. What's interesting to note is that as the tsunami is going across the Pacific, let's say you're in a boat, you're not going to feel much at all, maybe a few inches or even maybe a foot rise in the water. It's not that big of a deal until the wave approaches shallow water, and then it starts to it loses forward speed, but it gains sort of like a momentum. So it would be a series of waves and a rising of the water. And everyone that's seen the images from 2004 knows a little bit more about what the tsunami is like. There's that one initial wave, but then it's almost like the entire ocean rises for a sustained period of time, and that's what the problem is. Now, a tsunami of this intensity isn't going to be one that causes loss of life and such in Hawaii, especially not with these warnings. Everyone's going to get out of the way, and it's just going to do whatever it's going to do to the most low-lying areas.
We're talking about, according to the Tsunami Warning Center, exactly what you said, an elevation of sea level, where the sea level will rise above normal level and stay that way for 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, if you look through the history of tsunamis in Hawaii, there have been numerous that have been much higher than that and caused significant amounts of damage. But even before tsunami warnings were available, the smaller ones didn't actually cause that much loss of life. And we're talking about with no warning whatsoever. So it's not a cause of panic, but merely hopefully this is going to show what preparation has done, and especially what we've learned since 2004.
As I understand it, at Waikiki Beach, they're having people go to the higher floors of hotels, and people who are in low-lying areas in Honolulu there are being evacuated. The cell phone service is tough to get through in Hawaii to our people there. And what about California, though? Now, what about the people at the Del Coronado in San Diego this morning, or at Pebble Beach, those coastal areas? They have a tsunami warning. Is it likely that that wave could go all the way from Japan right to the west coast of the United States?
Absolutely. And when this thing is going across the open Pacific Ocean, it could be traveling 300 to 400 miles per hour.
Wow.
Which sounds devastating, but the thing is, again, it's only, if you're in a boat out there, you're going to notice a little bloop as it goes past. You wouldn't even notice it. But when it approaches land, it slows down dramatically. So when the wave approaches the west coast of the U.S., as it finally gets to shore, it might be going 25 miles an hour. And from what I have read, they're expecting maybe a 2-foot surge on the west coast of the U.S. So certainly no need to panic when it comes to that.
Is a 2-foot surge a lot?
It shouldn't be. I mean, if you just picture the coastline that you've been along in California, from what I've read, it's not expected to cause anything significant. Certainly, as a tourist or something, you wouldn't want to go stand to watch it.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to want to be away from the beach when it happens. But from everything I've read this morning, I don't think we're expecting anything significant to make it all the way to the west coast of the mainland U.S.
If an 8.9 Richter scale hurricane had hit Japan right square in the middle of Tokyo as opposed to out in the ocean, that would have been just unimaginable, right?
Oh, you think about well, if we just go back to the largest earthquakes in history, we're going to find the power of these things nowhere near the power of what we have seen on land here, like in the United States, for instance. And when you think about the scale, scientifically, every time you go up one number, it's 10 times more powerful than the previous number and multiplied. So, oh yeah, a magnitude 9, near 9 earthquake centered over the land would be absolutely devastating in a very near radius of where it had happened. Absolutely.
Now, we're hearing this morning, too, I don't know if you met my neighbors ever, Kevin and Susie Jager, but her father and brother are in Tokyo. Her brother and the kids are fine. The dad was teaching. He has not been heard from yet because transportation is shut down, subways are shut down, telephone communications and cell phone communications throughout Japan are obviously taxed at the moment. And these are the little stories that you're going to start hearing, as we go forward. I mean, people woke up this morning to this terrible news. I wanted to ask you very quickly, down in Miami yesterday, there was something called a microburst, and we got a couple of emails from people who said, what the heck happened on the golf course? I have only 30 seconds, but towers were knocked down and signs were knocked down and water was blown out of the ponds. What happened?
Yeah, a microburst, if you think of the wind like we do that blows horizontally, a microburst is wind that sort of comes straight down from the cloud, hits the ground, and spreads out rapidly. So they had wind gusts from that in the low 50s mile per hour, like 52 miles per hour, that were able to cause damage. Those are somewhat unpredictable when it comes to tracking them with radar. And the Weather Service that morning did put out statements that said to expect strong and gusty wind and isolated storms, and this happened one right over Doral.
Wow. That's very near the airport there, too, which makes it even more scary if a microburst were to hit an airplane, if you could imagine that. 18 minutes after the hour, he's Robert Shields, the chief meteorologist at WTOL TV 11 in Toledo. It's 18 after the hour. I'm Michael Patrick Shields. 24 minutes after the hour, Tony Cuthbert, our audio director, award-winning audio director, in fact, has been monitoring some of the radio stations throughout the Pacific Basin. He's got a little bit of audio from us from KHBH Radio at 8:30 a.m. in Hawaii. It's the middle of the night there, but the warning sirens have been sounded because not only is Hawaii under the the tsunami warning, Honolulu, Kona, and places like that, Maui, Hilo are all going to get some sort of tsunami result at 8 o'clock Eastern time this morning. Here's what it sounds like.
We're looking at arrival times: Honolulu 3:21, Nawiliwili 3:07, Kahului 3:27, Hilo 3:46 a.m. 500 miles an hour. That's what I have in my mind of just how fast, how much of a surge this truly is.
A 500-mile-an-hour surge with seas rising for a sustained time of 10 to 15 minutes is what the experts are saying. We talked to John McMurray and Robert Shields this morning, meteorologists who are having a look at the situation. The devastation in Japan and in Tokyo is unimaginable. A 8.9 on the Richter scale earthquake happened off the coast of Japan and sent a tsunami rushing in, and that picked up boats, it picked up buildings, it picked up farm equipment. It rushed this muddy black water deep into the heart of Japan, and the after effects, 19 aftershocks, some of them 6.0 on the Richter scale. Nikki Hale is our world correspondent. She's been following the story. Bring us up to date on what you know at this stage, Nikki.
Good morning, Michael. Japan has also issued a state of emergency because of a nuclear power plant that was hit and shut down. And unfortunately, the cooling system has had a mechanical failure. So they have an issue there with a nuclear plant, which is very dangerous. At this time, they are saying there's no radiation leaks, which is the main concern, but definitely a systematic problem with the cooling system not functioning there. The president has now come onto the news, and he is actually asking for the population in Japan to remain calm and to basically seek out their relatives and make sure that everybody's okay. Like you mentioned, at least 40 people have been reported as dead, 39 missing, and they just said that there's a ship carrying 100 people that has gone missing off the coast of Japan. So they're waiting to see if they can get a hold of that vessel and find out how the people are doing on that one as well.
A spokesperson for the U.S. military bases in Japan said all the service members were accounted for. No reports of damage to installations or ships. The President of the United States, President Barack Obama, offers his condolences and says the United States is standing by to help in this time of great trial. The quake toppled cars off of bridges and into waters underneath. Waves of debris flowed like lava across the farmland, pushing boats, houses, and trailers. 4 million homes have no power in Tokyo and the surrounding area. Dazed residents pouring into the streets after offices and schools were closed. It's the stuff that you would imagine is like at the end of the world. And now at 8 o'clock this morning Eastern Time, the after effects, the tsunami, will rumble into the Hawaiian Islands, and then beyond that, as we understand, to the coast of California. 20 countries this morning are under a tsunami warning. 50 areas all told in these countries. The threat of a tsunami, it's the United States National Weather Service issuing that warning. The wide-ranging list includes Russia, Indonesia, Central American countries like Guatemala, El Salvador, Costa Rica, and, of course, Hawaii and the west coast of California, all the way, Nikki Hale, from San Diego, if you will, down into Mexico, all the way up through Washington State, Oregon, and into Alaska. So happens that Katrine Medawar, the owner of Medawar Jewelers here in the Lansing area, is in California, where it's very, very early this morning, and she's on the other end of our line. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Michael. How are you this morning?
Sorry to speak to you so early in the morning, but I gotta believe there aren't too many people sleeping when they suddenly hear this morning that there's a tsunami warning for California. What's the mood like there? What are you hearing, and what are you doing?
Well, I'm at my sister's house in Huntington Beach. She's about 2 miles from the coast of Huntington Beach, and we are about half a mile from a tsunami zone. Mm-hmm. So Lillian and I are sitting here, we're looking at each other, and we're kind of praying and thinking, what are the steps we would need to take in case something happens?
They are talking about a surge of about 2 feet, which maybe doesn't sound like a lot, but it could be sustained for as long as 10 or 15 minutes. And what are the local news reports telling you to do, if anything, at this hour?
Well, to be honest with you, we just put the news on, and we really haven't heard much. We're watching what's going on in Japan, and it looks very scary. But we really haven't heard what we need to do here in case of an emergency.
Mm-hmm. In Hawaii, they're stocking up on fuel and water. They have warning signs going off that are really eerie to hear. You don't have tsunami warning sirens or anything like that in Huntington Beach?
We have not heard that yet, no, but I know that every house in this area has some emergency plan. We have water, extra food, things like this, a radio. So I know that they are prepared. But I'm just looking at the news, and all of a sudden I really would like to be in Lansing, Michigan.
Yeah, come on home as fast as you can. Who knew? God bless you and your sister there and everybody in coastal areas who are now paying attention in the middle of the night to this unimaginable news. Reuters is reporting now that a train is unaccounted for in Miyagi, Japan. We have a little bit of Hawaii audio ready. If we can listen into that, Tony Cuthbert will provide that for us right now.
We began an active evacuation of all coastal inundation zones. And since this is an event that we have to confront on a somewhat regular basis, we actually have the inundation zones in the front of our telephone books.
Yeah, that is Hawaii. They're used to this sort of activity. Well, you never get used to this, but it was about a year ago, February, that there was a tsunami warning for all of the Hawaiian Islands. And, of course, Hilo on the Big Island had been destroyed entirely at one time by, I think it was in 1942, if I'm not mistaken. But the magnitude 8.9 earthquake that struck Japan overnight triggered a tsunami that has raced across the country's northeast coast, now moving toward Hawaii. The Honolulu mayor that you just heard there, Peter Carlisle, said that once the first warning sirens were sounded, preparations got underway for what is coming. He also says that a tsunami, after all, can be very unpredictable.
You can't tell how many waves there are going to be. You can't tell whether the heights are going to be the same.
Police in Honolulu have been issuing warnings on loudspeakers for their patrol units. Here's what that sounds like. We'll have that for you coming shortly. We are live here in our American Metal Roof studio, a couple blocks from the Capitol in downtown Lansing, and heard all across the state of Michigan on radio stations in Grand Rapids and Mount Pleasant, Traverse City, Petoskey, Hastings, Saginaw, Kalamazoo, Muskegon, St. Joe, Benton Harbor this morning, and we will keep you up to date as best we can. We have made efforts to speak to our contacts in Hawaii. The cell phones are not working very well there right now. The system is probably overtaxed, and as you heard there, people we know in California, in Huntington Beach, Katrine Medawar and her sister there eyeing very carefully the news and the instruction what to do. Here's the police clip, the tsunami warning that we were talking about, as police are reaching out on loudspeakers to their forces in Honolulu with instructions.
Everyone, stay off the beaches, the streets, and sidewalks. Visitors, return to your hotels immediately and wait for further instructions.
That is haunting, isn't it? Stay off the beaches, stay off the streets, stay off the sidewalk. Visitors, return to your hotels. Let's hear that one more time.
Everyone, stay off the beaches, the streets, and sidewalks. Visitors, return to your hotels immediately and wait for further instructions.
So within 30 minutes or so, we are going to learn what will happen in the islands of Hawaii as that 6.5-foot tsunami is expected to roll into places like Kauai and Hilo and Kona and Maui and the rest there. It'll come staggered, as I understand, at different times. For instance, Honolulu will get it at 8:13 a.m. Eastern Time. It's amazing how they can time this down to the minute. Hilo will be roughly 30 minutes later on the Big Island of Hawaii. This all because of an 8.9 earthquake this morning in the ocean while you slept off of Japan. Please stay in close touch with us here. When we get back in 4 minutes, we'll have more details for you as we roll on through your Friday morning with some dreadful news from the Far East. It's Michael Patrick Shields back in a flash. 20 minutes before the hour, Michael Patrick Shields, heard all across the state of Michigan, and very glad to have you with us this morning. It is... in a few minutes, in 20 minutes, in fact, the first effects of this tsunami that resulted from an 8.9 earthquake in Japan will reach Hawaii, and then the warning for the west coast of the United States. We'll get back to coverage of that as we will attempt to go live to Hawaii in just a couple of minutes. Ron Van Timmeren from Celebration Cinemas is on the other end of our line on this Friday morning. Good morning to you, sir.
Hello, Michael Patrick.
You know, what was that Clint Eastwood movie last year that showed the unbelievable view of a tsunami? And, of course, it was special effects where they came rushing up onto the shore in the resort area there. Do you remember that picture?
Yeah, I do. One word, it's all about the afterlife, and what a cool special effect, but what a remarkable, facsimile of what we're seeing on the news today.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is people said that one scene was worth seeing the movie because it was so shocking to see what a tsunami can be like. And this morning we're watching images on the network news from Japan that are not special effects. They're real. And in this modern age of media, to be able to see destruction like that is ghastly.
Yeah, it was just my mouth was open. I just finally got a chance to see that down here at the radio station, and it is remarkable. And I'm just praying that nothing like that happens around the world for the aftershocks of the tsunami.
The other day, I thought of you because I was speaking to United States Senator Carl Levin, the Democrat, pretty serious dude here, long tenure in the state of Michigan. And here's what I asked him.
Did you notice that you got some airtime on the Academy Award broadcast?
I was told. I missed it. Even though I saw some of the Academy Awards, I missed the best part of the Academy Awards, which was about a second and a half of me.
That's right. You were the only United States Senator got airtime worldwide on the Academy Awards. We were proud of you.
Thank you. A lot of people told me how great it looked and all the rest, how fabulous it was. It made the whole Academy Award, the 3-hour thing, worth it while just for looking at me for 1 second. But I missed it.
Yeah, I think next year, instead of Anne Hathaway and James Franco, they may ask you to host the thing. Would you be up for that?
I already have, but I've reluctantly declined.
Senator, thanks for the time. We'll see you in Hollywood.
Yeah, right. You will.
Washington.
You got a sense of humor all of a sudden, huh?
Yeah. By the way, that was Hereafter. Thank you very much, Producer Jeff. And, that movie Casino Jack, right, from that documentary about Jack Abrahoff, he really got a lot of mileage out of that.
Yeah, I mean, when I hope that I'm never sitting at the other end of a Senate inquiry with Carl Levin looking down at me with those glasses on the end of his nose and those intense eyes. And, it's bad enough that I have to interview him. I don't want to be on the other end of him.
No, absolutely. He's a great character and a great politician. I wish him the best.
And he did get that little cameo in the Academy Awards. What's on the silver screen this weekend?
Well, kind of, the cataclysmic story never far from Hollywood's plate. This week it's Battle Los Angeles, not about fighting natural disasters, but aliens coming to the world, invading, and, it's kill or be killed. It reminds me of that movie District 9, throwing a little Black Hawk down, and you've got the #1 movie of the weekend, probably tracking about $30 million for Battle Los Angeles. Great special effects, about $100 million worth. Also, Red Riding Hood, not Little Red Riding Hood. This is the all-grown-up version. Amanda Seyfried is the star. Gary Oldman in it as well, directed by the woman who did Twilight. So it's got that little teen love triangle aspect to it as well. And then for the families, Mars Needs Moms. Nice-looking PG movie from producer Robert Zemeckis, who is really he's crafted and perfected this 3D technology, 3D, 2D, IMAX 3D versions of this movie, good for the kids.
All right, and we're coming up on St. Patrick's Day. We'll be broadcasting live from Doonbeg, County Clare, Ireland next Thursday, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, courtesy of the Resorts of Tullymore, a very Irish sort of place in Stanwood, Michigan. And the greatest movie about Ireland is...
Oh, was that that Ron Howard movie? Remember with Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise? I love that movie.
Oh, Far and Away or something?
Far and Away.
Yeah, they shot that actually in Dingle, which is one of the places that we'll be visiting. It's kind of my adopted hometown in Ireland. And the people at Ash's Bar told me that Tom Cruise is not a very good tipper.
Oh, no.
Okay, that's what they told me about that visit.
So what is the best Irish movie by Michael Patrick?
Well, in the modern age, I think Waking Ned Devine is a really good representation of what it's like, because you can still go to towns, and it's still like that there.
That was an awesome movie. That's a great rent on video.
Yeah, especially this time of year. And then I would say, going back a bit, The Quiet Man is a classic with John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara and Barry Fitzgerald. You get all sorts of hilarious lines out of that. Like, when I drink whiskey, I drink whiskey. When I drink water, I drink water. Fair enough, right? Happy St. Patrick's Day to you in advance, because somebody said you want a whiskey and water, and he said, wait a minute, stop right there. All the best to you, Ron Van Timmeren.
See you at the movies.
See you at the movies, too. That's Ron Van Timmeren from Celebration Cinemas. 15 before the hour. Right now, the Spartans were winners yesterday in the Big Ten tournament. Yeah, I said they won against Iowa. So now they get Purdue tonight. The Wolverines are going to have their first game in the Big Ten tournament today against Illinois. They only played Illinois once this season and lost to Illinois, so we'll see what they're able to do. And the Spartans lost twice to Purdue, so they're going to have to man up tonight in Indianapolis at the Conseco Fieldhouse. Tigers were winners yesterday, 6-1 against the Marlins. And PGA Tour, Justin Hicks, the player from Michigan, is 4 under par, 5 shots back in Puerto Rico. Hunter Mahan leads the event at Doral. Tiger Woods is well back. They're 6 strokes back, but they're not done playing the first round because of the microbursts and the storms there in Miami. Back in a flash. Live this morning in our American Metal Roost studio. Kind of wishing we were in Indianapolis for the Big Ten tournament because it's so much fun. Kirk Squires is here with us, too. Good morning, and welcome to the American Metal Roost studio.
Good morning, my friend. How are you? It's getting closer and closer to next Thursday, so I thought I'd come in to make sure that you're still going to be doing your Ireland broadcast.
The high holy day, and you're wearing, in fact, a Tullymore sweatshirt there. I appreciate that very much. They're our sponsor for the St. Patrick's Day tournament. And, you know, that logo is very Irish. The name's very Irish.
Yes, it is. And it's a great golf course and a great region in Michigan to go visit.
Heaven in the palm of Michigan. Now, you're going to be at the St. Patrick's Day parade in Corktown this weekend in Detroit?
Yeah, that's correct. A friend of mine owns a couple of restaurants called Gus O'Connor's, and he has a float that's going to be in the parade. And he emailed me and said, how would you like to be in the parade? So maybe I'll take some photos.
Boy, when somebody says, how'd you like to be in the parade, you got to say yes.
Oh, yeah.
Will you be dressed as a leprechaun?
Absolutely.
Will you really?
Know me, I've got my leprechaun outfit ready to go. You know, I mean, the Squire's name is not actually Irish, but
that will be classic.
I do have some Irish blood in me.
I know because I've seen you drinking it up from time to time. It's 9 minutes before the hour. On a serious note, we have a chance to speak very quickly with Danielle Tucker at the NBC affiliate in Honolulu this morning. Our dear friend. Good morning to you, madam.
Good morning, Michael. How are you?
I'm frightened for you because within a matter of looks like 10 to 15 minutes, you're going to get the effects of that tsunami that generated in Japan. What are you hearing? What do you know?
Okay, well, first of all, the first wave will come to Kauai and Niihau. It's forecast to be about 6 feet, and that's a big wave. We've got our entire coastal zones completely evacuated. It wasn't a request if you'd like to leave. It was a mandated evacuation of all the coastal areas. All of our coastal roads are evacuated as well. And at this point, we're just standing by and waiting. The sirens have been going off all morning or all morning.
Yeah.
It's 2:52. A lot of us didn't have cell phones because the systems went down, and they've been rebooted now. So in my case, I got a number of text messages from Virginia from my son telling me there's a tsunami coming, but I was in total oblivion until I woke up by myself at 2 o'clock this morning, and I'm hearing sirens, and I'm getting all these messages, and the station wants me to come to work. I'm like,
wow.
Okay, here we go. It's a tsunami, and it's 6 feet. It's pretty high, but as I said, the people in the low-lying areas, if you have friends or family, they've been evacuated, and it was a mandatory evacuation. Anybody with military friends or family on base, the military is really quick to move you out of the Pearl Harbor Basin and that Hickam area, so there's nothing to worry about. Everybody's been moved to higher ground.
Yeah, in fact, we heard the audio of Tony Cuthbert. If you'd play that for us now. This is very eerie to hear people, police going through the streets with a bullhorn saying this.
Everyone, stay off the beaches, the streets, and sidewalks.
On the air in Michigan, how can I help you?
Visitors, return to your hotels
Right here.
immediately and wait for further instructions.
Yeah, stay off the streets, stay off the sidewalks, stay off the beaches. If you're a visitor, go back to your hotel
know. I'm
immediately. Sounds like you better get to the NBC work there, but thank you very much, and God bless all of you. Keep in touch and let us know how it works out, okay?
Will do, Michael. Thank you so much for calling.
All right, thanks for taking the time to be with us. We worry about our friends in the Hawaiian Islands and then even on the west coast of the United States. Kirk Squires, Will Tiemann is in Indianapolis this morning after having the joy, Will Tiemann, of calling a victory yesterday for the Michigan State Spartans in round 1. Thanks for being available so early.
Well, Michael Patrick, we've been up, as you might guess, when you turn the game around, one after another, you just kind of stay up. But an Iowa win was big, We just had to win a game, and I think it's critical to get into the other tournament. So far, so good.
Do you sense, you've been through a lot of these Big Ten tournaments, do you sense more intensity from the team now, more focused than maybe you would have in years past in the Big Ten tournament?
No, I don't think so.
No?
Our guys have been pretty focused all the time. I know if you look at the Big Ten Michigan State record, you might question that a little bit, but they look like business as usual, which is what happens when you have a veteran team that year after year is used to tournament play. So I think that part they're fine. I think the bigger issue is going to be is Kalen Lucas, is his right ankle going to be okay tonight? And can this team play as a unit, as a cohesive unit well tonight? Because the Boilermakers of Purdue are really good.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Will, it's Kirk Squires. I noticed yesterday watching the game with 4 or 5 minutes to go, they were down 7 points, and everybody's going, here we go again. But then they made a big splurge and came back. It's such a game of momentum. Did you feel that when you were right by courtside, that they had the momentum coming back and they were actually going to hang on and win?
Well, you never know, because I'm really impressed with Iowa. After watching Iowa beat Purdue the last regular season game of the year, Iowa beat Purdue because they wouldn't go away and they just hung around. So all of a sudden we're down and the offense isn't working and you're just wondering. But at the end of the day, all runs start with the same way. They start with defense and rebounding. And it was interesting in the post-game comments, Draymond Green said, when there was a timeout called and Iowa was up by 7, he said to the guys, look, we were up by 7 at one time because we played defense and we rebound. Let's go back and do it. And once they did that, it was over.
You know what, though? There's an adage, is there not, in the last 20 seconds that we have here? It's tough to beat a team 3 times in one season. And Purdue's already beaten the Spartans twice. Isn't there some mystique to beating a team 3 times?
I've heard that, and I'll throw into that. Purdue is 0-2 against Michigan State in this tournament.
All right.
All right. Well, hey, thank you for the time. Rest your voice. Hopefully you're talking all the way into Sunday with the Michigan State Spartans. All the best, Will.
Okay, thanks.
3 minutes before the hour, that's Will Tiemann from the Spartan Sports Network, the play-by-play man who'll be courtside tonight for the game against Purdue. Television viewers, thanks for being with us. Thank you, Captain Kirk Squires with the Tullymore Jumper here in our American Metal Roof studio. It's Michael Patrick Shields.